We're the two teachers. Welcome to Citizen U.
Lifestyle. Tonight, we're reviewing political parties and campaigns.
Guys, this is one of my favorite topics because who doesn't like a party in campaigns? It's like it never ends. This is the government class that keeps ticking, going and going, the permanent campaign. Say, what kind of questions do you guys have?
Why don't you go first?
Well, I was just wondering if you can explain basically the whole idea around big tent politics.
Well, you know we love metaphors in the study of government. Political parties have one thing in mind. One thing in mind. They want to win elections.
Right.
To win elections, you need the most votes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what better way to do that than to invite someone into your category, invite someone into your loving arms? And the metaphor we like is a tent. The big tent wins.
Yep.
So they're not as interested in those rigid issues. They're not as interested in, we've always been on this point. It's about getting voters. It's a coalition. It's a broad-based coalition.
Remember, that goes back to James Madison's Federalist 10, the idea that to
Federalist Tent or Federalist 10?
You got it. The idea that to be successful in this large republic, you had to bring as many groups together, as many factions together as possible. You couldn't stop factions, but you could control them by building coalitions amongst different factions. Great question. Thank you.
All right, I actually had a question on the difference between PACs and super PACs. I'm a bit confused about those.
Campaign finance is one of the trickier topics in campaigns because it's so detailed.
Yes.
And it's so legalistic. And one of the legalistic differences is the difference between hard money, which is money that created by law in the 1970s, and it limits how much money we can give as individuals, or if we create a special interest group called a political action committee, that we could give to an individual candidate. So political action committees are limited to give a campaign, let's say the Hillary Clinton campaign or the Ted Cruz campaign, no more than $5,000, okay, directly to that campaign. And that presidential campaign can spend it on anything, transportation, advertisements, staff. Super PACs can raise an unlimited amount of money, and they can give an unlimited amount of money, and sometimes really not say where the money's coming from, but that money has to be independent of the campaigns. So you can, as a super PAC, spend money on behalf of Hillary Clinton. You can spend money on behalf of Ted Cruz, but that money can't go to those campaigns. It cannot go to pay for that presidential transportation campaign or the campaign staff. It has to be independent from a super PAC.
Campaign finance is a deep rabbit hole, and it's hard to get out of it once you get in. But we do know this. Pretty unlikely to see any serious reform anytime soon, because to win a presidential campaign, you've got to raise over $1 billion. Hard to do that when you're collecting nickels and dimes. And so these super PACs aren't going away. In fact, these super PACs are getting bigger and bigger and more important to a modern campaign.
So I think one of the most confusing, or what could be the most one of the most confusing topics is when it comes to voter registration, is the motor voter bill and exactly the logistics behind it.
Well, you know, when we talk about campaigns, you invariably talk about how do you attract voters? How can I get my people, my base voters, or my rank and file voters to the polls to vote? Well, historically, it's been difficult. There are institutional obstacles. And so one of the laws that was passed back in the 1990s, in fact, it was Bill Clinton's first law that he signed, was the motor voter bill. And the intent was, hey, everyone, or most people get a driver's license. Why not ask people when they get their driver's license, hey, have you registered to vote? The idea being is if you're registered to vote, you're more likely to vote. We call this the motor voter bill. The downside, however, is it hasn't proven to necessarily bring too many more people to the polls.
Yeah, make sure you don't confuse motor voter with get out the vote efforts or the idea of driving up the vote on election day. Get out the vote efforts is about grassroots campaigning. It's about going door to door, precinct committeemen at the very local levels of political parties, trying to get their neighbors out to vote, making phone calls. Sometimes we call that canvassing. But in the end, the people that you want to come out to vote have to be registered. And the idea was that motor voter was going to somehow make that easier by doing it, registering at the Department of Motor Vehicles.
We do know that oftentimes they say Participating in politics is a local issue, but these campaigns, like those national issues that galvanize public opinion, get a hot button issue like guns, maybe gun ownership, or get a hot button issue, some culture war issue that mobilizes and galvanizes the voters. We call that nationalizing an election.
Okay, going back to campaign finance, I guess, could you talk about some of the recent reforms there have been? Because there are a lot of like acronyms and like names of bills. And...
Well, Andrew, you want to keep going down into that rabbit hole, and
Yeah.
I would love to.
All right, here we go.
Reforms are tough, but we know they've tried to eliminate soft money. They've tried to eliminate that unlimited amount of money that we can give to the political parties. So clearly political parties have grown weaker because of this. But what's it done? It's created these super PACs that we talked about, also called 527 groups. And it's allowed interest groups to take a much larger role in the campaign. It's allowed people that maybe aren't even directly connected. And so you have maybe two billionaire brothers who say, we're going to try to influence politics because we can, and these billionaire brothers are going to buy up TV ads all over the country to influence. So as much as we've tried to eliminate money in campaigns, by reforming it and taking some of that unlimited money away from the political parties, it's given more power to maybe individuals.
Well, let's also be specific in answering Andrew's question, because you do have to know specific laws and cases sometimes. The Bipartisan Campaign Finance Reform Act, otherwise known as McCain-Feingold, that's the law that Congress passed in the early 2000s that closed the soft money loophole. Okay. So it eliminated unlimited money that you or I could give to a political party that they could spend to educate voters. At the same time, that law increased hard money so that you and I, instead of giving just $1,000 per election, we could give $2,000 plus inflation. And then the Supreme Court case that everyone's still buzzing about is Citizens United. And that's the case that said that unions and corporations could give an unlimited amount of money to special interest groups. They cannot give an unlimited amount of money to a campaign. It has to be independent. But that loophole was opened, particularly for corporations, by the Supreme Court decision in Citizens United.
I tell you, the Supreme Court case that I'm still buzzing about is Buckley v. Vallejo in 1976. This is the court case that established that campaign finance is protected by the First Amendment. That's something we all should be buzzing about.
Well, there's been a lot of talk about money and where that money goes and who comes up with that money. So I think that if you were to talk about hard money versus soft money, I'm wondering where the difference lies and how to
Simply put, hard money is given directly to the candidates. Soft money is given to independent groups away from the candidates. Say you've been reviewing political parties and campaigns. We're the two teachers. No fancy words.
No fancy suits.
Plain talk about issues you need to know.
Just in time.
Clear.